Welcome to KIMEcast, where we break through and cut the BS in sports medicine, rehabilitation, and sports performance, and talk about how things really work.
All right, welcome to KIMEcast. Tony Mikla. I'm here today with a special guest. This is Chris Rounds. Chris Rounds is the Director of Performance for the University of Arizona men's basketball team. It's been great to have you, Chris. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me.
So I've gotten to know Chris quite a bit over the last couple of years. We've had some time to get together at different events going back to U of A, and I've been super impressed with so many of just the conversations we've had and the strategies and things you've done there. And obviously your success speaks for itself and what you guys have done as a team and what you've done prior to your time in Arizona. So I'm excited to kind of bring you on and talk with you and let you hopefully have you share some of the things you're doing, some of the great things you're doing. I think that will really help so many coaches and so many other folks out there do it better.
Sure thing. Anything I can do to help?
Yes, sir. So you came to Arizona. You came here with Sean Miller a while back because you and Sean were together at Xavier. That's right?
Yeah. So Sean hired me at Xavier in 2004. We came here in 2009.
Nice. And then stayed on as Tommy came in as the head coach, able to stay on and stay with the squad, which is awesome. And we're all grateful to have you.
Yeah, I was very fortunate that Tommy kept me. So it's nice of him to give me a chance. And it's been a good 4 years. So.
I know it's always a difficult situation, right? When that head coach changes out, usually the staff can change too. So that says a lot to be able to stick with it.
Yeah, it's unusual. I just got lucky that Tommy was assistant and didn't have his own guy. But yeah, I made it. So Arizona's a special place, so it's good to be here.
Yeah, it's true. Coming from Gonzaga, where he wasn't a head coach before, he didn't have his own crew yet and everything, so it worked out well.
Yeah.
Well, cool. And then
go ahead.
But I think before that, which I learned from you, which was really interesting. I was at Arizona from 97 to 02. So in 97, obviously we played Kentucky for the national title, and we got a little bit of the better end of that situation. But at that time, you came back the next year and got it done. But you were part of Kentucky squad at that time with Patino as well, yeah?
Yeah, so I was doing an internship to finish up my undergrad, and I did it at Kentucky. So that was the 96, 97 season. So it was an intern. They brought me on as a part-time assistant for the following year, and then Patino and his group left to go to the Celtics. So I was again lucky enough to stay out with Tubby Smith for the next 3 years.
Oh, sweet. You guys won the title then in 98, though, didn't you?
We did. So runner-up at Arizona in 97, and then we won it again in 98. Yeah.
Well, I think that I know that we had a heck of a run there in 97 to be successful. I don't want to take anything away from Arizona, but the best player in Kentucky tore his ACL about 2 or 3 months prior to the end of the season there, right?
Yeah, he did. Somewhere at the beginning of the year in 97, he tore his ACL. So Derek Anderson, really good player, good kid, worked really hard to come back from that ACL. He was actually cleared, like I told you, for that game. Patino did not play him to protect him, but he did shoot free throws in the game on the technical against Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the National Player of the Year candidates. He was a tremendous player, averaging 20-something a game. So I know it was a big deal for Kentucky to lose him. I know you had a big role in rehabbing him back, which I learned in talking with you, which that was really cool the way you guys approached that and really built his strength up in the spring coming off that ACL.
Yeah, he had a really good doctor named Dr. Caborn, and then the physical therapist named John Nyland came over to our facility. So they started with him the same day of surgery, and we pushed him hard to get him back. And he was back and cleared early.
Yeah, I think when you guys pushed him and you had him in the weight room working with him really closely, I'm sure. How'd that progression kind of go for you? You're working with the PT. He's got his focus, his goals he's doing, and then you work closely with you guys as part of the weight team. Do you remember much about how that progression went along, and how you guys progressed that, and what you focused on kind of early on, and then how that shifted as you got further along?
I mean, I had his arms and his one good leg; those were my domain. Doc and the PT had his legs, so I followed their lead. I would go to John's office, learned a lot about physical therapy during that period. So we spent a lot of time together. He would come and watch me train him, and then he'd take him and do the rehab. And then as he got further along, then it kind of transitioned back to us. without, being an intern at that point. Uh, at that time of year, the team was traveling and stuff, so the staff wasn't really there. So I got put in charge who was able to do a lot of stuff with Derek. Charge might not be the
Yeah.
right word, but I had him. Train.
No, I think that's so important. I think that that concept right there that you have he's got obviously the injury to the leg, but there's the whole rest of the body to handle. You obviously working the opposite limb and then the upper body, and then you've got a cardiovascular system, to support that. And I think this is one of the big things that's so often missed, or something we don't do in the private sector as well as done at the professional level, or in your situation where you have a team concept and guys are on site there all the time, is that you have an athlete gets hurt in the private sector, and then it might be several weeks to several months before they actually get the care that's needed. In that time, they've lost so much, they've atrophied, they lose all their cardiovascular conditioning, and then they lose their hormone levels and everything change as well. Where if you have athletes that are tip top shape, everything's going perfect, and then boom, turn ACL or they an injury, then they go have surgery within a few weeks of that. They don't have a time to have that loss or that setback. So I think that's a major process about the ability to kind of return someone fast or rapidly back to the field or back onto the court, is that this idea that there's less loss in the beginning, managed really smartly by these folks, these people on the team, to be able to load it up and say, let's load in this way, um, and do all the safe things. And I think that's huge for like quality of blood, hormone levels, obviously the benefits of keeping everything else strong, hypertrophy. I'm sure there's some carryover. I don't know that there's much research showing that at this point, but I'm sure there's a ton of carryover from just strengthening the other limbs, doing everything we can.
Well, yeah, bilateral transfer has been a concept for a long time. I'm assuming still the research is still solid on it. I mean, I think it's about 47%, and that's what it was when I was in school. So if you train the healthy limb, the other limb will maintain around that. So I definitely have done that my entire career. If someone has an injury, they definitely train that affected limbs, and they get better for sure.
I think it's a key thing. We do it as well, and it's a huge component. It takes a ton of time, and it's hard to kind of get all that in, which is great in your environment where you have a strength coach working with the rehab team, sports medicine, PT, whatever it is. That's a huge aspect to I think the success of the case, is to really kind of be able to get some load on the athlete in an appropriate way.
Yeah, the conditioning stuff when they're able to, we have obviously poles. So I have a dive well that's 17 feet deep. So you can do a lot of conditioning stuff in there. You can do track workouts in the deep end where they're not in any contact with the surface. So you can get their conditioning going pretty quickly too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a huge component. I was talking to somebody who was going in for they were in a pre-op situation, they're gonna have surgery, really high level skier, and they're gonna have surgery on their back here in the coming few weeks. And we were talking about the ideas like, hey, the biggest thing you can do pre-operatively besides the strength work is conditioning wise, make sure that we get the heart and lungs in good shape. They're gonna put you under anesthesia. That's going to be a threat in its own way. So get all those systems healthy and operating as fully as possible. So like surviving the anesthesia and recovering from the anesthesia is important, and then that limits our downtime, so that right away in the next few days, we can kind of get going and get things loaded up and move in the right direction right away.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly people that have built their bodies up will decondition and lose muscle after a surgery. Bed rest is no joke.
Oh man, it's no joke. Yeah, we just saw that with the astronauts that came back. I think this has been a thing for a long time. I've known this forever, but you go up in the space shuttle even after a few days and come back down. They come out on a gurney.
Yeah, the first cosmonauts were a mess when they came back. But when I was in school in Buffalo, a lot of my professors in exercise science were working for NASA. It's a big thing how to exercise in space with zero gravity. So we got to learn a lot about the issues of that for sure.
Yeah, and it's the amount of loss, the speed at which you lose muscle mass is it's so frustrating for all of us who train it every day. But holy man, it's just sad. It's so hard. But yeah, the second you take your weight off the leg and you're injured and you go non-weight bearing, the loss is just whoom. It's just so immediate.
Yeah, that's scary.
Well, cool. Well, back to more like present day. I think it's I'd love to talk a little about what you're doing with the program and the way that you approach those basketball guys at this phase. And we've had some good conversations around the idea of lifting And I'd like to just maybe a little more in general, like how do you how does it organize for you with the team at this point? Are you doing mostly stuff individual? Are you doing it in small groups? Do you have the whole team coming together? And how does that look as the season goes around?
It depends on how many people you have. So right now I have three returners with me. I have two guys that are transferring out training, so I have a total of five guys today. I'll keep those guys in one group. Now, if it gets to be more than that, then I'll break them up. So we try to keep it between 3 and 5 in a group. Um, and then we're going to train in the off season 5 days a week on an upper lower split. So we can have an increase in volume doing that. Time wise, it makes it pretty efficient. I do have NCAA rules that keep me on certain time schedules, so I have to be kind of efficient with what I'm doing. But that's
Yeah, that's right.
well.
So you keep them in these small groups for most of the year. I've seen that as well. The way your weight room's designed and the way that you work, it seems like working either one-on-one or a small group is better than having 12, 15. This year, you guys had a roster of like 18 guys.
Yeah, I was up to 20 with the walk on. So if we have like a weekend practice in the season, like I might have the whole team come like an hour before practice because it's going to be, I wouldn't say maintenance, not as intense. But other than that, they're in small groups during the week for sure. The whole year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get it? I mean, I remember when we were there and in my collegiate time of training, it was always like, everybody would come into the team. The weight room was massive. Everybody's doing bar based stuff, but they spread it out over a bunch of racks. We'd have 15 guys in there and knock it out. We used to train a lot. Like we'd have practice. This was in season. We'd have practice and then they get a 30-40 minute workout in quickly. And then we'd go travel, get on a plane, head up to Oregon or head to LA and play the schools or whatever. How do you get those workouts in on travel days? They're just responsible to get their own stuff in either before practice or after.
It's going to be scheduled. That'll be before if we can. I mean, we've had it maybe three total lifts in time in 4 years after practice. That's not ideal.
Yeah,
and they've been great with giving me time before. So as long as we don't have like a super early flight, we'll lift on those days. It's usually a team again, just because of time constraints. But we'll lift and then go into practice. We really, I think we might have missed one scheduled lift in 4 years with time. Like we're really good about being consistent, and that's how you stay, injury free and strong.
yeah. I mean, that's the key, right? I mean, I think that's when you look at the performance, the role of the performance director, that's really it, right? Keep the guys on the court, number one, and then better their performance. In then certain ways, I always say this to folks, like if you can make someone improve by, 2%, 5%, 10%, you're making massive improvements, right? But if someone gets hurt, their performance drops by 100%. That's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, I've been kind of going through the numbers, moving to the Big 12 and the things that we've been doing. We had the lowest injury rates in the Pac-12 for the last 14 and 15 years. The first year we didn't, just because it was a transitional period. And then we were one of the best in the Big 12 this year. So it's like 15 straight years. We've probably had really low injury rates, led our conference in that. And our trainer, Justin Kakashi, does a really good job, and they all keep track of those numbers. So it's something we're proud of. We try to take really good care of our players. So
I think that's the key to success, man. You gotta have. I mean, you see that in every sport, and certainly at every level, but definitely as you get more and more elite to the D1 levels or to the pro levels. If you can have a healthy team going into the playoffs or a healthy team going into a situation where those guys have been together, played together on the court together, and then they go into a competitive environment. I mean, those guys they can go to war and be effective.
yeah, they definitely have to be healthy, like you said. That's first and foremost. And that's really our goal. I mean, a strength and conditioning program should promote, performance, but injury prevention is, obviously right there with that.
Yeah, they kind of go hand to hand for the most part.
They do.
So I think your weight room is pretty cool there. So if in your environment, I'll just brief some people on it so they don't know is they've got at Arizona they got a dedicated practice facility. It's got 2 full courts and they've got a dedicated weight room for basketball. Men's and women's share that, but I think that what's what's really interesting, you go into a weight room, a college weight room in most situations, and you see squat racks and barbells, and you see powerlifting platforms and these types of scenarios. And what Chris has done in the weight room is really cool. It's actually a different version of that. So it's got two squat racks, where he does have rack access, but he has a variety of some unique machines. I know you got some really unique machines that you're passionate about that you utilize a lot in your programming. And I think what's really cool that's important to take away is it's really important we load these guys, as I know you can speak to, and I think you're real passionate about loading them and loading them effectively with science, but at the same time loading them in a very smart way where we're not doing stuff that people have always just traditionally done just because that's what's out there, right? Not everybody squats, not everybody back squats, not everybody deadlifts from the ground. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. And I think a lot of people are moving away from that in some ways, particularly in basketball, just because in a lot of ways, the NIL, everybody's rosters are changing quickly. Uh, but I've been asked a lot of questions about the machines I have, strength coaches in the Big 12. So we have a lot of pendulum pieces. I have a lot of MedX pieces, some Nautilus pieces, and some hammer strength pieces. It's just based on which machine is the best one from each company as far as the force curves and the way that they're produced and made to maximize strength gains. But we're really trying not to load anybody's back or put stress on their knees. So we don't squat, we don't deadlift. I do not mind the trap bar deadlift. But some of the kids that I've had, they just they're going to make so much money. It's just a little bit of a risk for the low backs doing stuff. So I'm just going to not use it, even though I do waffle on it every year, putting it back into the program. But I do have about 5 different presses, a belt squat to train your hips, maximally tax the muscle without stressing the joints. So every time we lift weights, guys are going as hard as they can, but literally there's no risk of injury or wear to a joint. That's our primary focus. But strength is the key.
Absolutely. That's what's so great. I mean, the using a belt squat's such a good tool. Like it's a phenomenal platform, phenomenal tool that you can really put load right where you want it. Put load through the hips, put load through the legs, put load through the lower extremity. But at the same time, we don't put risk on the spine, shoulders, or anything else that's kind of can cause some collateral damage.
Correct. Yeah, it's a really good piece. The one I have, it just doesn't have enough resistance for a lot of these kids. So I'm trying to figure out how to make it heavier. But
yeah, it's a good problem to have. You need 100-pound plates instead of the 45-pound plates.
Yeah, I do. I think that's going to be the easiest way to go. A different company, Sornex made some for the guys who just left, went to Washington. So it's like it after tour Washington football facility a few weeks back when we were up in Seattle. And Sornex made them a version of a shark that has much less weight needed to have a really heavy load. So it's kind of interesting to see that.
Yeah, that's smart. I like it. They got great stuff. Sornex is so creative in their tools they're creating and using. You use like a leg press unit as well. That's a similar idea where I know you've done a lot of work with the guys in like a leg press environment, and it's more of just the angles and stuff that's kind of set up at. It allows you to kind of really focus on the hip and the upper thigh region without loading the spine.
Yeah, the pendulum makes a really nice thing they call it seated squat. It has like a split deck, so you can do unilateral training. It really allows you to go through a full range of motion. So, I mean, a big thing in basketball is mobility, flexibility. If you use these pieces right, you're going to gain flexibility and mobility through your hips. So you wouldn't necessarily have to spend a whole lot of time doing like specific training for increases in mobility. It should come from full range weightlifting. If you do it correctly, that's like a focus of what you're trying to accomplish.
I think I think you have a unique, not unique, but you have it's definitely a specialized group there where you're getting some pretty elite athletes coming in. Obviously, these guys are studs in the Division I level, and many of them have NBA futures or professional level futures for sure. So I think there's a huge aspect of, man, these guys already do a lot of things really well. You know, they're already plyometrically usually quite friendly. They're usually pretty bouncy guys, pretty explosive. And then there's also some of the guys are just bigger and stronger and like take up more space and they're more like rock, like a guy like like Jokic or something in the NBA, like a big guy that just takes up space. How do you go about when these guys come in, assessing them to see where they're at, and then doing any kind of work to determine, where you should program them from the point that they come in? And obviously, there's a lot of variety there. But what are some steps you take to maybe to do some of the evaluation or assessments as you get a freshman or you get a transfer coming in?
I mean, the big thing for me is their body weight, the body fat percentage. At least from a performance perspective. Like I want them to have enough mass at the position and how they play. So based on years of experience and talking to the staff, we'll establish goals for that. We'll watch how they move on the court. Our trainer gives multiple mobility, whatever you would call screens, if you will. They use Tracer, I think, and a couple other ways he can look at it. We'll communicate on those things, but for the most part, the way we train, it's kind of everything's kind of built in to correct for the imbalances, the issues that you're going to see. So anytime that guy has like a weird movement patterns, their body's going to kind of adjust, and some muscles are going to lengthen, some are going to shorten based on how they are moving on the court. When we lift, we're trying to make sure the body's in proper alignment, and so those muscles are going to have to stretch or not based on the imbalances of the weird things you see with the bodies that I get. And over time, as long as their joints are lined up properly when they're lifting with heavy weight, they'll recalibrate kind of back to normal, as much as you can possibly do. When you're practicing 2 to 3 hours a day, it's really hard to go back to zero. But we really do make an attempt to do a lot of unilateral stuff to get their bodies working the way they were before they started playing basketball.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I think it's great too that you consider obvious. I mean, it seems obvious, but to consider the role they play. And as people that don't know, as the level of play goes up. So in a situation like this, where you're gonna like at a Big 12 school like Arizona, and you have some star level talent, you're gonna have bigs. They're gonna be big guys. They're gonna be 6'10", 6'11", 7-footers. You're gonna have guards that are gonna be anywhere from 6 foot to 6'6", 6'7" guards. So you're gonna have different sized bodies playing positions, and it'd be pretty dedicated. Where probably not gonna have a 6'7" guy playing a post position or playing down low at this level. So it allows a strength coach like Chris here to be able to kind of say, what position do you play? What are the demands on your body? How much lateral change of direction are you going to have to do versus how much you're going to be pounding in the post, working on a rebounding, how much contact you're going to have, and then set those goals appropriately. I assume that's something you take into account pretty heavily, yeah?
We do. And I mean, everybody's, they are what they are, so to speak. So when you get a body and you get a kid, it's like, they kind of, it leads you in the right direction, right? So you look at a kid and say, I got Tobe Awaka, who's 6'9", 255, 260. He's a monster. I'm not going to make him 218 and like a finesse player. It's not ever going to happen regardless of what I do. So you're really trying to maximize their strengths. Like a lot of kids come in and they want to show what they can't do. We're really trying to make them basically the best at what they can do and can do well. To be in the NBA, you don't have to be great at everything. You just have to be elite at something. So
Yeah.
we really try to push them in that direction.
Yeah, you got to bring something special to the table, and like you said, know how to use your strengths well. Love it. So we had a conversation briefly. We didn't get a chance to dive too deep on it. I was in a rush last time I was down there. Actually down there for the Houston game. So it's good to see Houston in the national title game tonight.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I see how they represent the Big 12. Man, that team's tough defensively.
They finish, so they're in good shape and they close out games. That's something that people should take note of. If you train hard and that you execute, you can win in the end. Like you don't have to play great the whole game, but you just have to stay in it and keep competing. They do it well.
Yeah. Well, the game, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's watching them beat Duke the other day was absolutely incredible. To be down 14 and then to hold them to one bucket over a 10-minute stretch against one of the best offensive teams, not only in the country, but that we've seen in a while is absolutely incredible. I heard that the Houston guys that like the slowest time of the starting five in the mile run is like 5:15 or something like that, or 5:30, some ridiculous number.
Yeah, I've never asked their strength coach, but I could find that out. That's low, but yeah.
I was like, that's insane. But most of the guys, let's even see if they were under 6-minute miles. I mean, those are some big men. I mean, they got some big boys there that's a fast time. But it speaks to what you were saying about being conditioned to the end.
Yeah, they do a lot of conditioning, and if you train for the mile, you can get really good at it. So the year before I started at Kentucky, I know on record, Mark Pope was going into his last year, and at 6'10", 240, I think he ran 447 was his time. So but you train for it. You can get really good at those things if you want to.
Yeah. Yeah, and then at the end of the day, what's the transfer, right? I mean, I think it's a great VO2 test, a great measure as far as like can these guys play for long distance. But in basketball too, it's a shifty game, so you have to have a balance of
Mhm.
both.
Yeah, we tested the mile for a long, long time. It's not a test that I really think is applicable to the game. Uh, but Tommy luckily doesn't want to test it, so I haven't had to test that in a while. Uh, but it's one of those things that every time you go out there, like, man, I don't have anybody get hurt doing this. You know,
Yeah,
it's all I'm thinking every time I had to do it. So
I know it's that's the hardest part to get to push an athlete hard enough. I think in the fall, you know, when you get them,
yeah,
the guys starting to concord to school. Now we're getting them earlier, so then you get them like probably as early as June or July, which is awesome. But you get a guy, you got 3 4 months to kind of get him in shape, learn all about him, and everything, and then make sure you don't hurt him, but put him in the best position possible to be
yeah.
there.
I can remember you always test the mile. We did at the end of like preseason, so it's like right before you start practice.
Yeah,
And we had Aaron Gordon one year, and like he's flying, like he just takes off, and like Sean Miller's like, oh my God, what's he doing? He just keeps going. And so he's like trying to stop him, like slow him down for the last lap, kicking it, trying to get through. And it was just like, hey, why are we doing this? Without worried about this kid hurting himself, like, we have to stop
yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, I watched this long time ago when I was with the team. This back in like 90, probably 2000, I suppose. Obviously, you had nothing to do with this, but I remember watching that. We were preseason conditioning. We were running 200s on the track, and an athlete was turning the corner, running the 200, and right as he turned the corner, he started to pull up on his hamstring a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and the coach was screaming at him, "Shut it down, shut it down." But yet he still kind of ran through it because it's like if you don't finish, it's a big punishment for the rest of the team, kind of a deal at that
Yep.
time. And yeah, he went down, and I mean that cost him 6 8 weeks on that. So it's something to be sensitive to.
Well, I mean, back then too, the rules have changed. So back then, I had 8 hours a week, and coaches had none. So you would go to the track, or you'd ride bikes, be on the court doing agility. Like you did all these activities because you had all this time. But every time that CFA, the coaches have more access. Like I just took stuff out of my program. So our conditioning now to me is very minimal. We do things in preseason, but for the most part, as long as you're not overweight, it's not part of what we do.
Yeah, it's really done on the court with just playing
Yeah.
and getting up and down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe in
Yeah.
that strongly. I think that running, it's certainly running kids or running athletes at this level, as that's something we ever did in our success back in the day. There was I mean, outside of that little preseason bit of work, but when season started, I mean, there was never guys running. You just play, get up and down the court and play, and intensity of practice determines that and provides that need.
Yeah, that people always ask about like, you guys are in great shape. That's like, man, it's February. I haven't touched them in conditioning. I have nothing to do with that at this point. That's the head coach and like it's practicing games. I mean, you might take a few guys here and there if they're not playing, but for the most part, the team's conditioning. It's up to the coaches what they do in practice every day.
Yeah. I was really impressed with that at the time. This is far before, like 20 years ago, far before they had catapults and all these
Mm-hmm.
sensory systems that they're using now. I see you guys have a system you guys are using. You can
Yep.
see on the guys' jerseys, but it was cool. Like one thing that Luke did was, as we get towards the kind of the February part of the season, and for our starting point guard, we're known for running the point guard. I mean, he's running the court
Mm-hmm.
36, 40 minutes a game. So I mean, oftentimes him, maybe a couple of the other starting guys that played, more than 35 minutes a game, he'd actually excuse them from practice or sit them down and practice quite a bit as the kind of the Pac-10 season would come to an end, just to save their legs and get them off their legs a little bit. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was really obviously insightful and interesting, like at that phase. And then now we've seen it become more popularized. I think in the NBA, certainly it's noted and seen a lot. Have you guys used that technology much? I don't think you guys use it for like player management that way, do you?
Well, yeah, when Tommy was hired, they do a lot more skill work than I was used to with Sean. So I worked for Miller for 17 years. I knew exactly what was going to happen all year, every year. So with Tommy, I was like, it was bizarre to me because they'd have guys working out in the morning. I wouldn't be there. Like I didn't know what they did. They would be working out at night. Um, so the volume was like I couldn't get my mind around how much was being done. So I did get the connects on units to try to manage that to see because nobody had like a global picture. Tommy wasn't trying to manage it; he was letting the staff do whatever. So literally, a player could work out with one coach in the morning, and then another coach might bring it back later in the day, and they
Sure,
didn't know. So
sure.
I do think that the Connexon gave me an overview of how much work was being done each day. But I also think that once I introduced that to the team, the coaches that work players out did less.
Sure.
So they knew they were being tracked, so they dropped their volume, which I didn't want to do. I wanted to see exactly how much was occurring. And we've run it for 2 years now. I do like it. I think there's some value to what it's telling us. It does appear, though, with the Kinect, there's a very linear relationship between distance and the accumulation load. So the NBA's load management is based on this accumulation load, which is supposed to be a lot of change of direction stuff goes into it. But even they call those exertions, they don't seem to be nearly as linear as just straight distance. So um, I'm not totally sold on all the aspects of it, but I do think that it'll give you a good idea how much work is being done by each player each day. If you track the individual skill work and the practices, then you can have a global picture for a week, a month, a year, one season to the next. So I do think that's a very useful application for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like you said, I mean, it's too bad they modified a little bit of the workload because it's always insightful. You never know like what some guys can take or what the average is for the team that you have to take or the way that a certain coach runs programs to see how the athletes respond. Because I mean, it's great to also learn to be like, man, we really pushed this guy. He did a tremendous amount of volume and has done really quite well. He's actually improved. His tolerance has gone up. He's actually performed much better. And then another athlete might push to the same level, and they might break based on either prior training age or training load or history or whatever it is. So all those things are always it's such a learning process to know the coach, like you said, know the coaches, know the stimulus of what you guys are giving as a program, and then also look at the athlete to be like, all right, how are these athletes built? What can they tolerate?
Yeah, and it becomes very cyclical. So if I watch a practice from an individual now that I've looked at these numbers for 2 straight years, like I'll walk away and say that was 800 units, that was 500 units. You have like a very good idea of what happened just because you've seen the actual data so often.
Yeah, yeah,
We had guys in the beginning, like Kylan Bosmo might do 4 workouts in a day, and he might have 4 to 5 games worth of load in one day in the off season. It's like, is that helping him?
yeah.
I don't think that necessarily a lot of it was. So at that point, education becomes key.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I got an opportunity to do this. I was working with Odell Beckham for a while there, and right before he went, well, actually, right when he got drafted with the Giants, he went in. He went into camp healthy, and they had this at that point. They were just kind of getting started with like catapult system, and they had the system. And they really didn't know what to look at. Like to your point, like there's a lot of data. Didn't really know what to follow. What was important. And so at the end of the day, he strained his hamstring and he missed like the first 4 or 5 games of that season. The game he came back was the game where he did that one-handed catch that made him famous. But it was interesting. So he got hurt during camp. He came back, saw me in Phoenix, and they sent a strength coach out with him. And we were looking at the data, and he's like, "Hey, because I would have had no idea this happened at the moment. But looking back on it, what was really clear is we were averaging 2,000 yards a day for like a week, 10 days, 2,000 yards a day of coverage. And then we had a day where we did 4,000 yards. We had another day we did 4,000 yards back to back. And then the third day, once we got to 2,000 yards, is where the injury happened, where he pulled the hamstring. And so it's like if you look at nothing else but load volume, you can see that okay, the tissue was built up to tolerate at a certain level, 2,000 yards in this case, and then they exceeded it a few times, probably fatigued him, and then the tissue kind of gave up after that, or at least was a contributing factor.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people are going to have, they get tired, they get injured. Injuries happen late in practice, late in games. I mean, fatigue is almost, not always, but it's quite often a factor for sure.
Yeah, number one risk, I guess, is prior injury. Number two risk is fatigue.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like we were talking about in the beginning, I think it's a massive thing to convey with coming off of an injury too. Like if my responsibility coming off of an ACL is to get that athlete in a position where they can get back on the field and play. And I think considering how the fatigue level and the conditioning they need so that they don't get that fatigue, right? So if I put him back out there, we clear him back to go back in the game. By the third quarter, he's exhausted, but he's still out there playing. I mean, that puts him at extremely high risk.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly does. And then you obviously, other things happen when you come back from injury. You're moving differently, you're protecting. Like there's a lot of things you got to watch. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so many variables. All right, cool. So let's talk a little about maybe some of the other strategies that you take on with the way that you approach your programming and such. you don't have a ton of Olympic lifting tools in your weight room, as you talked about already. Not really deadlifting, not really squatting. If you're not deadlifting, then you're probably not doing cleans and such. And I grew up in an era where, as a strength conditioning coach, that was the gold standard, especially and still is, I think, in a lot of football programs. That, hey, cleans and not necessarily snatch, but in some cases maybe snatch or a jerk. These Olympic lifts were commonly used, and the goal was that they would the idea was they were highly correlated to improving jump and improving speed. But we're seeing alternative ways to do that. Maybe that information isn't as true as maybe everyone once thought it was.
Well, when I did that internship in Kentucky, I just assumed I was going to go into a training facility that'd be Olympic lifting based, and that was it. Like, that's all they taught you in school. The NSCA was relatively new back then. So Boyd Epley and those guys, that's all they talked about, blah, blah, blah. So when I walked into Kentucky and they were doing something totally different, I was like, I didn't think it was wrong. It was just, I was a little surprised by it. And then they make you do it. So they beat the living hell out of you with the weights.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But I was in grad school, so I decided to get my master's when I was there. So I just decided every project that I could go and research, I'd always try to figure, let me find something about Olympic lifting, power. So everything I've got to research was based on trying to find evidence that Olympic lifting lifts would actually impact performance, and I couldn't find any. So I read literally every piece of research I could find at the Kentucky Library. I mean, I spent hour upon hour upon hour. I don't even know how much money I spent on photocopies of research, and I couldn't find anything that would say, this is what you do. In fact, motor control experts would say, like, there is no transfer. So if you're saying you're doing the motor power clean to become more explosive, like, it's a totally different thing than a jump. So it's like the experts who are the leading experts in that, motor control experts, say it doesn't work. That transfer doesn't exist past like the elementary learning stages. But like I said, it's what people did. The first strength coaches for Olympic lifters, because that's when football went to, the only people that lift weights for them. So, hey, I need a strength coach. Come on over. So that just became the training mode. But again, I've never seen anything that would say it's the right way to go.
Yeah. No, I think it's such a great point. I think you see at first glance, it kind of makes sense to a weight room guy, to like, hey, lift a heavy weight and be explosive and get it vertically off the ground. You could see how that could correlate to vertical jump potentially. And then I can see how you might be able to make the correlation where you need a lot of glute strength to get off the ground, a lot of posterior chain work. So that's going to improve speed as well. So I can see how those correlations were thought of, but I've never been a big fan. I think it's a good tool, and I think it's an appropriate tool for certain sports and certain environments. But I think it's a sport. Olympic lifting is a sport, and it takes 3 to 5 years to like master just the movement, which nobody has. You don't have 3 to 5 years anymore. And
well, even a squat, get your erector and low back strong enough to support a weight that's heavy enough to actually load your hips. It's going to take 18 months, give or take, but you always see that lag where the low back sags behind. So, I mean, I went through this again, these numbers, 6 new players a year since I've been in Arizona. That's 46% of my roster changes every year. I mean, that's stupid. So, like, you have no continuity, you have no training base.
Yeah.
Dudes are coming, dudes are going. It's like, and in that time, by the way, all we do is win. You know what I mean? So you're healthy and you're
right. Yeah.
So you have to figure it out. Like, all the strength coaches I talk to now, they're all bitching about NIL, the roster changes. I'm like, dude, I've been dealing with that for 2 decades.
Yeah, exactly.
Get used to it. I'm not kidding.
Welcome to the big time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's a problem, but again, like, you put them in safe environments and you push them really hard in ways that they can't get hurt and they have to get better. I mean, good things happen, and it's like, if it's controllable, you have to schedule it, and you have to be disciplined and execute it. But like, it's not like it's not rocket science.
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing that I love in talking with you, Chris, is like you keep coming back to like really consistent thing. Obviously, being consistent, number one, loading them, number two, and then the simplicity of that you don't have to make it complicated. That I love that you take an approach which I feel like I do the same, in this idea that I'm not trying to be the hero. I'm just trying to come in and like give you the tools you need in the most basic form I can, the safest way I can, but get your body to adapt. So then you can go out on the floor and do what you do well.
Yeah, if you go back and look at our game against Houston at the end, in the Big 12 tournament, Caleb Love is driving. He actually steps on somebody's foot. His knee buckles, and like it could have been really bad. But when you looked at it live, like they called it travel, but the kid almost lost his knee. It's like the next day I see him, he's like, that leg press saved. You know what I mean? Like he knows because I've been on those guys all year about staying on his leg press, moving heavy weight. He's like, my knee, I didn't get hurt at all because of that. Like they know when they do it and they're held accountable to it that it is helping them. There's a reason.
Absolutely. No, I think that is so important to be able to give guys like those bursts of like max loading so that they have the ability to go strong when they need to, right? They don't use it every rep or all the time, but at times they need it. Can you share like what your dosage might be and like your programming for that? Say it's when you're building strength in the preseason or in the off season compared to what it's in the in season, like how do you load that?
So I've been in basketball for almost 30 years. Like I've not taken any type of complexity out of anything. So what I do is like dumb it down to the F degree. So in the off season, we train legs. They're going to do 4 compound lifts, 3 or 4. So 2 joints. So 1 of the leg presses, 3 of the leg presses, lunges, split squats. And we're only doing 2 sets and should be training close to failure, if not failure. So if they can get to 10, they should go up in weight. And then they just keep moving the weight. So if you move up by a small amount, you get 6. The next time, 7, 8, 9, 10, they go up in weight again. So lower body, 3 or 4 compound lifts, 2 or 3 isolations. So there's always going to do a hamstring curl. And we do a lot of leg extension with isometric holds, as we talked about. So we do isometric holds on lunges, pitch shark we hold, and leg extensions we hold. But once we go in season, like I only have them do 4 lifts for lower body. So it's 2 compound and 2 isolations. So they always have to do the hamstring curl, and then they get to pick which compound movements they do. But the weight has to stay the same. Like we're not going down from what we're doing in the off season. So the intensity stays high. I just drop the volume by probably 60 to 65%, so that they can go and lift really, really hard, but shake it off in 20 to 30 minutes and go straight to practice. That way we're keeping the strength and the power, but we're not creating extra wear.
Yeah. This is an incredibly important point. This idea that you do not decrease load in season, assuming you've built the base to tolerate that load, but you drop the volume significantly. And if anything, you might increase the intensity. I do that with guys. It's like, assuming they're safe, we can increase it. The form and quality is good.
Yeah, and if they do it right, they still get stronger. Like we lift twice a week in season, 5 days a week off season. For guys that literally play, they're only going to lift twice a week. But the guys that actually come and they're religiously try, they still get stronger.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I see that from a distance and watching the team this year. I think the team got better as a whole, and I think guys got stronger as they went along and did things better than they did at the end. Especially like young guys like Carter coming in. I think he did a better job as the season went on. Became stronger in many ways.
Yeah, it's really not that hard to get better, but people are just soft and they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it every day. Which gives me a job, right?
Yeah, there's the accountability piece there for sure. That sometimes is the biggest one.
It is.
So true. Would you say if you're working with a younger group, say you had an opportunity to like speak to a younger group of people that were maybe at high school, preparing to go to college, and what would you say to them about this field, about strength conditioning, about how to prepare their body in a way to be ready for the next level or to continue to improve so they would reach their own potential?
I think you have to have a plan, and then more isn't better. So if people first start to train, they get a little better, they see some improvements, they just keep trying to add. But eventually you're going to overtrain, you're going to end up with a problem. So if your intensity is high and your volume's low and you schedule it, meaning you don't like train like chest 2 days in a row, you got to have days off in between. You can accomplish really good things. So setting schedule and being religious with execution, it's going to help you in your life a lot more than anything else. So you just have to follow their people do not.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be fun. It doesn't have to be like this super entertaining weight room. You come do the same shit. Just be really consistent. Get after it.
I've never had anybody have fun. If they have fun with me, it's a problem. It's a bad day. Something went wrong.
Something's gone terribly wrong.
Yeah, it's extremely painful and uncomfortable. You're sore. if you actually like weightlifting, it's probably something looking, or you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, you're doing it wrong. It's not intense enough, most likely.
Yeah, yeah,
I think you said a mouthful and a couple of things there, and about the fall that like when the lead weight room, the guys are probably tired and a little bit miserable. And then when you leave the weight room in the in season period of time, you still have the energy to get back on the court and feel like the weight room wasn't the hardest part of your day. And I tell that to athletes all the time. I think it's a really critical thought process. If you're not sure if you're doing it right, that's the easiest way to know. If you leave the weight room in season, you should leave the weight room energized. Like that was a great lift, got after it, I feel good. Let's go. I want to go I want to go dunk, or I'm ready to play. If that's the feeling, you did it right. And in the off season, if you feel like that, you did it wrong.
but the problem you have with like some of the Olympic lifts or heavy squats and then it's just like you're just drained. Like so you do those lifts and then you walk out. I'm like, man, I got nothing. Like my joints kind of hurt, my back's stiff.
Yeah.
I'm tanked. It's like, is that really the best thing for sports? So again, like I'm paid to win. Like if we don't win, I'm gonna get fired. So it's like at the end of the day, everything I'm doing is to win games. I don't care at all about the weightlifting component. Like hockey training, like this is the first time I've done that in forever. Like I deal with more like sports psych and like how to get these guys to be, you know, doing what they want and still be able to perform and be happy because it's like there's just so many different stressors that like the actual strength and conditioning. I don't think about that. I haven't thought about that in 25 years.
Yeah.
More about how to get them to show.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a good argument that we've probably, as a field, if we get too prideful on the commitment of what we do in strength and conditioning and like how well they do in there, that can actually hinder athletic performance and actually, cause injuries and such with guys. Not necessarily because it's one particular lift, but just because it's like a loading strategy. By the time they're loaded in the weight room and then they're on the court doing things or on the field, whatever it is, just adds up.
Yeah, if you wear people out, like I've broken people by pushing them in the weight room. And it's like, I mean, they're not here to lift weights. They're here to play a sport. Like I just ruined this kid's career because I was like making him lift weights to a point that he like couldn't function. Like it's mine, bro. Like he just didn't want to do it anymore. Like, I really do my job to help him. I made it about me and about weightlifting early in my career. It's not about, but it wasn't about that. It's about helping them play a game. So as you get older and you have more experience, you kind of get different tolerances, I guess.
Yeah.
So I might let one guy work at 60%, which drives me nuts, and I would have killed him as a 25-year-old. But now it's kind of like, I mean, that's all he's going to give me. It's all he's got. Like he's a good player. He's going to help the team win games. Like if I persecute him on this exercise stuff, like is that really helping anybody in this group? I mean, I can look at it either way. But
that's real coaching, man. That's it. I think that's seeing the big picture, super respectful of the group, of the team, of the individual, And then I'm sure there's probably times where there's a one-on-one meeting or there's something like where you can dive deeper. Maybe you get that kid the next off season where you can say, all right, hey, we got some months to like redial it in. Can we do something here,
There's always conversations, and I mean, some of those lead up to like, depending on how you answer these next questions or whether I ever talk to you again. It's like, that would definitely happen.
Yeah, for sure. You're not at the point where you can find the guys yet, right? You're not like the NBA where they can find you if you don't show up.
No, I just talked to him the other day because we were in Jersey, in Newark, we were right across from the Giants facility. So Chris Allen, who was Rich Rod's strength coach, he was just back working for the women's team, but he just took a job at the Giants.
Okay.
So we went over. He was nice enough to let us go to the facilities. So Dr. Saker, our team doctor, myself went over, and they currently have weigh-ins. So once a week, the Giants will weigh you in. If you miss your weight, for each pound, they fine you $700.
Yeah, yeah.
So like being late, like, man, I think we need to start finding kids if I can't punch them down.
Yeah. It's probably the next step with the NIL stuff. We had I was talking to an NBA strength coach a few years ago, and he was talking about this and how it's so difficult. Like as a strength coach, he sets the time, sets the plan. Hey, guys, come in and lift, etc. And the lifting culture has definitely improved in basketball. Like 10 years ago, it was more not needed at all. I think people are seeing it now with bigger guys, stronger guys out there showing them what it's all about. But nonetheless, he's like he'd have to. If the guy was late, he technically could fine him, and the fine could be like $10,000 to $15,000, pretty substantial. And he's like, but it's me. I have to fill out paperwork and do the fine. He goes, so if I fine him to my own accountability. He's like, I might lose all relationship with that player. It's really hard to know that that player's have to pay that money back to the club, and it's because of his decisions. But I have to be the one to actually push the button and do it. It's a really tough spot for them to be in and operate from as a developer, like trying to build culture and be on the team. It's kind of like it's almost like having a teammate, but it's still a coach turn you in. It's
Yeah,
it's hard from a pyramid level. It's a hard thing to manage.
yeah. Then the player can turn around and get you fired.
Oh yeah, now
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I
Nowadays for
always,
sure.
yeah. In my area in college, like the physical activity, like I always used a stairmaster. If you were late, you did an hour, a certain level. It was safe. It's a controlled environment. If you can't finish it, you just come off, you step off, then you come back the next day. So there's no risk of injury. But it took the time. It's an hour and it is hard, but it's also going to make them better. Like if players would call me at night, it's always about their schedule. So I'd always make them do extra lifting the next day. So I would come up with all these like little games and punishments, but it's like teaching them like there are rules, there are things like as a player, you're not supposed to call me at night. We're not friends.
Yeah.
Like I have a family. Like you're going to do that because you didn't play it. So I'd squeeze extra work out of them, which also helps them get better and helps the team. Like I'd much rather do that than take somebody's fun.
Yeah. Right.
You know?
100%. Yeah, I think that's where he was coming from too. It's just tough. I got on back onto the isometric conversation about like
Yeah.
managing tendons. I think in basketball it's a big issue managing tendon issues. Patella tendon, Achilles tendon, all the stuff on the foot, posterior tib, all that good stuff. I think it's a real thing. I've we've talked about in the past, and as you know, obviously there's isometrics and stuff can be great tools. So my son taught me this. He's 14. He's not exactly tall, so but he did have some knee pain over the last year as he's kind of gone through a growth spurt. So I showed him what to do, and this kid's amazing. I showed it once, and he's just like he gets after it in the weight room. But I didn't realize how much he was doing stuff. We have a little gym in our garage, and then I train him as a team a couple nights a week in our facility. But I was asking him how his knees going. It doesn't hurt. He's like, doesn't hurt anymore, Dad. It's fine now. And this has been for a while. And sometimes we'll have like big volume days, or he'll play a lot. And I'm like, how's the knee? He's like, oh, it's fine. And I've watched him more and asked him like, what are you doing for your knee? Like besides what I told you, he goes, well, I do what you said. But I do it every day. I'd spend like 20 minutes on it every day. And he's doing. He rigged it up where he could take a dumbbell and do like a knee extension hold, like we were
Yeah.
talking about earlier. And then we do a lunge hold, like split squat with with a weight over that front leg, and he just loads that thing up and just kills it. But he does it he does it as a warm up prior to practice, which is something I didn't necessarily tell him when to do it. But he found out that like doing it right before he plays is really good, and then he would do it kind of at the end of playing as well. So I hit it twice. Um, but the consistency at which he's applying that, which I knew was the science shows that's true. But it's kind of interesting to watch him and the consistency at which he applies it and the load at which he does it has been interesting to watch, like how he gets it in. I think that's the hardest part is like, how do you get it in when you have like a tendon issue at the same time still being able to play or not play, but then get enough work in to actually get that tendon to adapt? I think is one of our hardest questions.
But it's also good that he's using it as a warm up before practice. So like if you did it 2 hours before practice and your body got warm, then you cool down, then you go back and you go into a practice, it's a chance it could like exacerbate it, And so you have to kind of like systematically plan how you're going to do it and when. But yeah, that makes
You
sense.
guys had, yeah, absolutely. Do you guys do a lot of, do you do a lot of tendon preparation stuff with the guys, like in the preseason, so to speak, or do you like think much about it, or just
I know
as you load them, it comes through?
as you load them, it comes through. As you know, like the muscles super adaptive. Once you start putting more tension on the muscle, the tendons will slowly follow suit and strengthen, and then the bones will get stronger. So as long as you're having these guys under tension year round, like it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Now I do like to deload them. So like season just ended, we've been out for a week. I'd like to see them take time off the court because that's obviously where the damage occurs. The more time that we can take off there and not do like really intense stuff, the better. Just to my back to like the normal state. But lifting can happen right away. So I had some guys lifting on Tuesday. We played Thursday. They took the weekend and started back right away. Um, but again, I don't worry about it unless there's an issue. Somebody has pain.
Yeah, I agree with you. As long as they're strong and they're continuing to strength train, they're when a person's developing, I think in their maybe their younger ages, below the age of like 18 or 20, you have to have a big growth spurt. I think they need more training during that period to get that tendon to catch up and adapt during that big change.
Yeah.
But otherwise, as long as they stay strong on their lifting, I haven't seen it become an issue either. I feel like that the tendon management is really a non-issue. The biggest problem we have is someone who's not training; they're just playing only, and then they have growth spurts, or they just play all the time, but they're not actually getting stronger or doing things to complement the physiology of the muscle. And then we see it go the other direction. We see a breakdown. We see pain patterns come from that.
I mean, anytime you have tendonitis, right up the issue there, it's just you're not strong enough to withstand the activity you're doing. I mean,
Yep.
and it's
Yep.
not that
That's it.
complicated. So it's as long as you're smart about it. And we really try to make that stuff simple. I'm not causing problems in the shopping suites. Do it.
Well, you're right. That's then when people say, tendonitis, they go, what is it? What is it? It's an overuse syndrome. Well, it's overused compared to what it's used to.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you used it too much. I mean, you used it more than what you trained it for. So you just got to get your training load caught up so that it's no longer overuse. It's no longer now it becomes the norm.
Yep. Yeah, I did see some
Exactly.
stuff. We had like Obey Oaxaca, and like we would go to different courts. So like we were in the Bahamas, and they put a court over our ballroom floor. And so his tendonitis got put off down there just because the surface wasn't good. And then you wouldn't believe it, but the Big 12 tournament floor had like crazy catch spots, the guy said. So like the ball would get stuck, it wouldn't bounce the same in some spots, and they would feel it. So like he started to flare up because of that court, Kansas City too.
Interesting.
But, yeah, that's the first time I've really seen that, but it happened.
Yeah, that's the real deal. We played at Stanford back at Maples, and they have a court that had a bit of a. It was supposed to be a really safe court. It had a lot of gives to it. That was back days of Mark Madsen and the Collins brothers running back and forth. That sucker's like a trampoline, and like the players could feel it. They would know it. I mean, on the bench, the court would like wave. It was wild. But I mean, Richard Jefferson broke his foot on that court. He actually had a fifth metatarsal fracture on that court that day, or at least that's when it expressed itself, was on that court. But yeah, it was it's interesting. The courts make a difference, that's for sure.
Yeah, you think they'd be uniform? You'd have the same ball. Like there's some things that just don't miss balls.
Yeah, the ball thing too. That's a sensitive topic. But changing the ball out, it's like, man, that's a big variable in that game.
I mean, the Big 12 tournament, NCAA tournaments, those balls are brand new. Our guys popping out of our guys' hands all the time. Yeah, we can't be the only team having problems with it, but it's wild.
Well, and now the balls are all like specialty made with the stamped logos and all that kind of stuff. Like that kind of started a while back, and I remember we'd always work hard. I'm sure you guys do as well, to get the ball from that tournament prior to actually going, right? So we could use it in practice for at least 3 or 4 days prior to actually showing up, so the guys could adapt. Because that's a big deal. How it feels in your hands, how it comes out when you're shooting, it's a big deal.
Yeah, we have probably I don't know how many, 6 different sets of balls. But how many different ones are out there?
Depending on where you guys play and what ball you're gonna be using. Yeah.
The equipment guys have to blow them up and pull them out, but we own them.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you gotta be ready.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Chris, thank you very much. It's great to catch up with you. I appreciate taking the time to talk and share some of your ideas and some of your experience there. Great job.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love your man, like you said, your consistency and your success you've had. I think speaks to those values that you have about being consistent, keeping it simple. And it's great to see you out there having success and doing it the right way and challenging, I think, some of the normal views and some of the historical views in the sport.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Most of that stuff will be gone by now, but a lot of it's still around.